that poverty is meant to be in those areas, but that should not be the case. True, poverty can be caused by poverty itself, but we believe that if proper investments are done in such areas, then we'll be able to actually flourish. Take a very good example of the asals in this country occupy almost 80% of the Kenya's landmass. So it means for the past 60 years we have been investing in the 20% of the country. So just take if we happen to invest on 40% of that or for half of that 80%, then we'll be able to have massive economic growth in this country. So investment in Asal is the most viable thing to do right now. It is timely for us to do it now. Otherwise, with the levels of desertification in this country, if we not be able to cope up with climate change adaptation and mitigation, then there is a fear that the entire country will actually fall, will actually turn Asal in the next 10 or 15 years. The other wealth is that you look at these counties, 90% of the wildlife in this country come from those counties. So again, tourism is another area that has not been fully actually exploited when you look at that statistics. Coming to renewable energy, coming to oil, you have Turkana, aquifer. Coming to oil, you have Turkana. Now we have an oil in Turkana, which is in Asal County. So the potential, there is a huge untapped potential in these counties. So it's important for us now to focus, to actually change focus and turn to these marginalized areas, so that we'll be able to actually improve on our economic standards and even conditions in this country. Investment in Asal is a great contributor to the GDP of this country.
Talking about legislation, we have seen severally, especially when we were going through the drought season, the legislators from these 29 counties were very vocal in terms of calling out for foreign aid and invoking the government to declare it as a national disaster. But going forward, you have talked a lot of important things. What part can the legislation hatch onto to ensure that they benefit from this conversation as opposed to being a victim in the whole conversation?
In terms of legislation, I think we have sufficient legislation mechanisms in this country, talking about ranging from National Drought Management Fund to National Drought Management Authority. So I think in terms of legislation, we are not short of any legislation. But the issue is now enforcing the legislation that is in place. That becomes a question that needs to be addressed in this country. When you have the question has been always lack of resources to implement the current legislation. So our appeal is to avail more resources being invested in Asal counties, so that we'll be able to mitigate all these challenges. The other question that needs to be addressed is the viability. Is it viable to invest in Asals? Yes, it is viable to invest in Asals. But most of us will look at the economic returns and feel like investing in such areas becomes is not attractive. But the question is, if then it's not attractive, what makes it to be? What are we going to do about what are we going to do to make the investment in Asal County being an attractive issue?
Finally, the role of the Deputy President in steering this conversation for the country has been very paramount. He has been outright with it when it comes to looking for development partners to also invest in the infrastructure of water. He was at the annual Kenya Water and Sanitation Exhibition just the other day, and also made his pronouncement on the need to also invest in this water systems in the country. As he comes, what are some of the takeouts that the stakeholders, what that the county and the national governments can take on from this 3-day conference that will be very vital going forward? Is it the adoption of the framework, for example, the disaster response framework, and can it be cascaded down to a county level, or what are some of the take-ons that can ensure that effective conversations have been taken out of this 3-day conference?
One is the disaster risk management framework. The adoption of that framework is very important to ASAL counties, and especially we are even proposing that we have disaster risk management operational centers. We need to operationalize the disaster risk management framework in our counties. Having such centers in our counties will be of great help, because you see, we have been actually handling disasters year in, year out. The outcome has not been good, so we need to actually invent new ways of handling such problems. And the other concern is the water. I'll still come back to the investment in water infrastructure that you're talking about. That is key and paramount in executing any program in ASAL counties. So I think over the years we have seen immense resources splashed in ASAL counties with less actually impact. So we want to have a change in narrative where we have that resource invested properly, and we need to have what we call focused target to ensure that that resource is put in the right place. The other takeaway is that there has been a discussion here on how we can improve the livestock market. The livestock market in this country has not been good enough to actually help a farmer or a pastoralist get the value for their animals. For example, you have seen in the last drought we have lost over a value of about 2 billion from our livestock. So this is something that can be actually mitigated, or can be handled well if we have proper marketing structure in infrastructure for this particular sector.
The youth also, as we wind up, the youth are very present in this conversation. Do you think that them being here is also a good contributor to the economic stability of these counties?
Yeah, the youth have been playing have played a role in economic contribution, but I think there is need to actually do a lot of awareness and have youth education, especially on issues to do with climate change mitigation and adaptation, climate change adaptation and mitigation, because I think most people don't want to participate in these activities, and I think something can be, maybe it will be societal, it will be socio-economic, or maybe it is because of our socio-economic factors that will not allow us to participate in this. But it is good now to have this conference is a platform where our youth will get to have a takeaway and something to take home once the session is done.
Thank you for your time, Bwana PS. It has been very informative and educative as well to our audience. We are at the Pwani University, where the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis is holding a 3-day conference to stimulate conversations that will initiate or enhance economic growth and development for the ASAL's regions. We are awaiting the arrival of the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, later on in the day. We have been following the conversations, the panels that have been going on to ensure that the ASALs are at an informed, the stakeholders or even the policymakers are at an informed point when they are continuing the legislations over the years. So we will be giving you live proceedings, of course, and more stories in our news, main news bulletins later on in the day. But for now, I hand it back to you in studio as we wait again for the arrival of the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, later on in the day. My name is Juni Karisa. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much for that very exciting discussion.
Now I'm being a King Kong. How many times now I show this is my kingdom? Now bring it back. let me do it for my people. Now bring it back, let me do it for my people. How many times nimefanya iwe simple? How many times now I show this is my season? Now bring it back, let me do it for my people. Now bring it back, let me do it for my people. Last overdone peace, still I represent my hood. 24/7 on the grind, tango childhood. I stay different from my years, so misunderstood. But I'm in the place for his shit, I wish a nigga would. Addicted to success, papa chasing every day. Never quitting any day, I didn't fit the Broadway. Came on my love, she's my girl in the booth. I caress her on the speaker, she's moaning, this is foreplay. I got 2 chains on my neck, I stay true. Every minute when I roll with this started, Thomas sky is the limit. Can you deal me ufanya only if you're gonna profit? You know how I do my thing, kila kitu wanna legend. Boss check, flow check, swag check, attitude piga check. Reshoko na mkulisha blue pale DM. I'm after that check, sina time ya my PM. Hapa kazi no sleeping, they will never catch me slacking late night. In the stew I be recording while they teaching. Wakenda trip na Subaru, me I'm working on my legacy. The rise of a king, let me show you my supremacy. How many times now I'm be a mini King Kong? How many times now I show this is my kingdom? Now bring it back, let me do it for my people. Now bring it back, let me do it for my people. How many times nimefanya iwe simple? How many times now I show this is my season? Now bring it back, let me do it for my people. Now bring it back, let me do it for my people. Mama J, now I rock, mini top dog. When news feed every minute like I run a blog. I'm so ahead, I'm digital. Bado wako on like the best there is. Just believe, now I check my catalog. I said I ain't ordinary, I'm a force to return. I go hard every day, for my city put it on. Really jeshi I'm too moja, now I lead, man alone. And with the mic, now I place, now I need the same tone. Behind the enemy lines, in a conga front line. Upper winning is a must, cause it's in my bloodline. While it dropping on the man, build my own, I'm on the man. They lift me out in the dark, so he now I outshine.
All right, that was June Karisa joining us all the way from Kilifi County for the Kippra Annual Regional Conference. And unfortunately, this is where we're going to be calling it a wrap right here on Entertainment Thursday. We'll see you next week, same time and place. On behalf of everyone who has made this show a success, we wish you a beautiful and productive day.